We are only halfway through 2018 and we've already seen a pretty diverse set of new trends in smartphones. Big steps forward in the camera department, the first phones with over 90% screen on the front, and a new emphasis on intricate colour options. So today, we've got the budget phones, we've got the China phones, we've got the flagship phones. These are my top 10 favourite smartphones in 2018 so far. And a quick disclaimer, whilst I have used pretty much every major phone released this year, there are a couple of exceptions, notably the latest from LG and HTC, just because those are two companies that aren't very good at dealing with YouTubers, and I think it's a mistake they're actually paying quite dearly for. Okay, let's get straight into it, and the first phone, number 10 on our list, is the Oppo R15 Pro. With a fantastic display, design and cameras, the R15 Pro is easily one of the best flagships under $600. The only sticking point for me is the mid-tier Snapdragon 660 chip, which is not slow, but we've now seen this same chip in phones costing less than half the price. Moving on, the Honor 10, and this is probably the best example of a company really pushing themselves to pursue the more ambitious colour options. The phantom finish, as they call it, can shift colours depending on which angle you look from. So when you get bored of looking at the front of the phone, you've always got the back. At the equivalent of just over $400, it does fall into unusual territory. But for those of you who want a close to flagship experience in terms of performance and camera, and have no room for maneuver with budget, this is probably your best bet. Not to mention Honor have just dropped their new GPU turbo feature, which I've been playing around with and has drastically improved frame rates when playing games. Number 8 is the ELEPHONE U Pro, which I've gone ahead and given away both units I had, but I did spend 2 weeks with the phone, and couldn't help but be surprised at what the company has done here. A 6-inch curved AMOLED display, Snapdragon 660, and great battery life. It was released at $389, but given the amount of time that has passed, you should be able to find it even cheaper than that. But even at this price, I actually ran a social experiment where I handed the phone to people and told them how much it was, and let's just say most of them were pretty impressed.
17. Ah! Wow!
Okay, number 7 is actually the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus. Whilst on one hand, the S9 Plus was disappointingly iterative in nature, and not hugely exciting compared to the more experimental phones this year, that doesn't change the fact that this is one of the most well-rounded devices you can buy right now, in terms of camera, display, design, and even audio. I can still safely recommend the S9 Plus to almost everyone who's looking for a flagship phone, and be rest assured that they'll be happy with it. Bear in mind that, as of the filming of this video, we are just shy of the Galaxy Note 9's launch, and I'm sure that's also a phone that would fit comfortably in my top 10. But because of how expensive it'll probably be based on last year's Note 8, probably not in the top 3, but we'll have to wait and see. Number 6 is Xiaomi's Mi Mix 2S, and this is a phone that really defies its price. When you're spending just over $500, you're kind of expecting a phone where the company is just trying to cram as many flagship features in as possible, but with no real flair of its own. The 2S has flair in spades. It takes most of what we loved from the original Mix, but has bumped up the chip to the latest Snapdragon 845, introduced a solid dual camera, and added some cool little software features like full gesture control. Okay, top 5. The Oppo Find X, which is a phone that I decided within minutes of picking it up for the first time was one of the most beautiful bits of tech I own. From the huge 6.4-inch panoramic ARC AMOLED screen to the top-tier performance and the 25-megapixel front camera, this is a phone with very little compromise. And in fact, the only thing holding this phone back from being even higher on my list is the lofty price tag. And it's not even unreasonably expensive, it's just a case that in mid-2018, better value exists elsewhere. Number 4, and you might have seen this one coming, because in 4th place, we've got the Vivo NEX S, which is the phone I'm using on a day-to-day basis right now. It has a lot of what makes the Find X so great, but is nearly $100 cheaper. The in-display fingerprint scanner is not that reliable, and the dual cameras are only okay, but most of the time you're going to be too engrossed in the 6.6-inch Super AMOLED screen on the front to let it bother you too much. And I've got to say, after having used the Vivo NEX for a period of time, using any other smartphone feels like a compromise, because their display will either be smaller, surrounded by a bezel, or with a notch. 3rd place, Xiaomi's brand new Mi A2. And this is a bit different to other phones in the list in that it targets a completely different segment. At €250 or just under $300, the Mi A2 is hands down the best value budget phone I've ever seen. Xiaomi has dropped pretty much every optional extra like wireless charging, IP certification and fast charging in exchange for a really fast, powerful core Android experience. Number 2 is Huawei P20 Pro. It is striking to look at, and the battery and camera are not just good, but incredible. In many cases, such as super low light, no other phone camera even comes close to the P20 Pro. There is so much difference that this feels like it is from a different generation. It isn't as powerful as Snapdragon 845 powered phones, and I would put that down as the phone's biggest deficit, but at the same time, Huawei is really flexing their AI muscle here. And as a result, the software, the user experience, and even app loading times managed to keep up quite well. Huawei did also at the same time drop the standard P20, which is also a pretty good phone, but it misses out on a lot of what makes the Pros special, and so hasn't quite made the cut on this list. Number 1, and you probably will have got it by now just by process of elimination, but in case you haven't, the ONEPLUS 6. And the reason I say this is that everything has to be judged based on its price. And so, whilst the ONEPLUS 6 is not a better phone than the Oppo Find X or the Vivo NEX S, it is better value. $500 couldn't be spent better on any other smartphone right now. What is interesting about the ONEPLUS 6 is that it actually shares a lot of DNA with the Oppo R15 Pro that we featured at the beginning of the video. But for the same price you get a faster chip which helps not just in performance and games, but also in the camera, and a much cleaner software experience. Relative to other phones, even phones that are twice the price, the camera is the only main area where you make some sort of unambiguous compromise. And even then, it's not by much. Also, whilst there is a standard midnight black version, I really dig the red on this phone. It isn't subtle by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a lot of fun. Now, just bear in mind that this is a list based off my preferences. There are some things I can say about one phone that are unambiguously better than some things about another phone, but at the same time, things like color preference, things like the importance of wireless charging for me, all of that stuff is going to be on a scale, and you just got to decide yourself where you sit on it. Also, I did mention it at the beginning of the video, but just to reiterate, this list only contains phones that have been released this year. There are a couple of great phones like the iPhone X, like the Google Pixel 2 that are still relevant today, but they're not on this list because they were released last year. I do also, as a bit of a bonus, have a couple of other phones that didn't quite make the cut, but that I really do like. The Red Magic, a gaming focused phone with this one-of-a-kind breathing RGB light strip. And Sony's XZ2, which is a really solid all-round phone that can record video in 4K with HDR. But aside from this, just doesn't do quite enough to differentiate itself. Alright guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you're new to the channel, if you could smash that subscribe button down below, that would really mean a lot to me. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you guys next time.